Good morning! I am home. I've got sheep in the background just so that you can see I am in New Zealand. Great to be home. I've taken a week just to settle back into things and just take in what I've just achieved. This video I'm going to go through a summary of things. So there's going to be a lot of statistics which I will show you, speeds covered, distances, time, weight loss, all of those sorts of things as well. But I just wanted to talk about the whole experience before I did that. So the whole journey, 2,653 miles or 4,270 kilometers. Mexican border in Campo, all the way up to the Canadian border near Manning. I set out to do it as a purist, and I achieved that as much as I could in a snow year. So I amended my definition of being a pure through hike. Because of the snow, it couldn't be every step of the trail. So what I defined a pure hike is continuous journey from the Mexican border to the Canadian border, walking every step of visible and open trail. So I had to clarify the visible trail in the snow, the zigzags, the switchbacks. You couldn't see the trail for most of the Sierras, so couldn't tell if you were on the zigzag or if you were going directly. And I talked about the open trail. There were only two areas where the trail was closed, just after Mount Baden-Powell. There was a small closure for the yellow-legged frogs, and at Crater Lake, the trail, official trail around Crater Lake was closed because there were two mountain lions with young kits. So unfortunately, which I was really happy about, we got to use the rim trail as the official alternate. But apart from that, I tapped off when I left the trail, I tapped on when I got onto the trail. If I was going off the trail to go and see something or to go to the toilet, I always made sure I came back to the exact same spot. Just want to say, those that hike it another way, that's their way of hiking it. Neither way, purist, non-purist, neither way is right or wrong. It's just the personal journey that each individual wants to make. For myself, I've managed to be pure for all of my other hikes, and it's just a personal thing for me. I'm a very goal-focused person. I like defined things and I like to achieve what I set out to achieve, and that's why for me personally I went with a pure hike. This year I think the whole PCT was dominated with talk about the Sierras. It seemed like almost from the start. It's funny, the first week the questions were, have you done a long hike before? And after that, the key question, you meet someone, you fist bump and say hello, and then the question is, are you going through the Sierras? For me, the answer was always yes. The only thing that would have stopped me would have been extreme avalanche danger, and temporary stopping for that, and temporary stopping for storms. As I ended up having to wait out an extra 4 days for some major storms in May to go through. I'm lucky, I have mountaineering experience, I'm more than comfortable in the snow, I'm comfortable by myself in the snow, I know how to navigate, and I've got experience with river crossing. So for me, I was happy going through. For all those that went around, well done. They took the safe decision for their experience and their comfort level. So yeah, it was an interesting, sometimes divisive topic about going through. I remember talking to one person, and when I said I was going through, they started abusing me. And then when they found out I was going through just by myself, they basically said I was going to die and I was going to kill everyone else that came to rescue me. So different people had their different perspectives. I've explained in the videos why I went by myself, but in summary, I was confident in my own experience. I didn't want the responsibility of taking beginners through the Sierras and teaching them as we go, and I also didn't want to go through with someone I didn't know and didn't trust. And from what I heard from other groups, going through as a group wasn't necessarily any safer. And in some instances, when the group think started to make bad decisions, it was even more dangerous. I found because I was by myself, I had to really think about everything and assess the risk really heavily, whereas other groups felt because there was more people, they could push through more dangerous areas. And a lot of what I've heard of other groups also was basically the only advantage of going through in a group is they could identify where the body was. They couldn't do anything to actually stop the casualties happening, which, yeah, was something that you have to weigh up. There were some groups that were brilliant, some groups worked together as a group, made good decisions, and for them it was a good idea. They had experienced people teaching the less experienced people. But for me, through hiking is a selfish endeavour. It's my chance to be alone in nature and be fully relaxed. And I can never be fully relaxed when there's people around because I'm always considering them. So that's why I went through the Sierras alone. It was a fantastic experience. Definitely one of the highlights of the trip. Common questions I've been getting is what was the best moments and the worst moments. I'll start with the worst moments. I had to think about it, and I came up with the times I weren't enjoying myself probably adds up to 3 hours, and they all relate to traversing on really steep terrain. So I had a steep snow slope and having to walk along the side of it, where there was a big drop off, and one of the worst ones, there was a river, really raging river at the bottom of the snow slope, and the snow slope was quite short. There wasn't enough time if I slipped to self-arrest before hitting the river. So that was pretty stressful. And there are a couple of other steep traverses where I just mentally, I got into a bad state, and I just started concentrating on how horrible the traverse was, rather than, you know, what I was experiencing. And both times I actually forced myself to stop. I looked at the view that I could see, just had to think about why I was there and what I was doing, and it just reset my mind back to a positive frame, and then after that it was good again. So yeah, those are really the only negative points. There were times it was cold, but it was never miserable cold. There was times it was raining, but it was never miserable raining. Yeah, so I'm very lucky, but that's part of my mindset. I'm very much an optimist. I very much, if there's a horrible situation, if it's cold and it's raining, I always stop and I think, well, what's the positive in this experience? And when it's cold, it's, well, look at the pretty snow and look at the frost, and it's nice to walk on the frozen snow. It's much better than sinking down into it. When it's raining, you start to look up close and you're looking at the raindrops on the vegetation and how the colours just pop and become more vibrant. So I find if you have a mindset like that, and the minute you start to feel like you're not enjoying it, is just stop and find the positive in whatever it is you're doing. The highlights, I mean, the whole trail was amazing. There was a lot of variety in the trail, lots of different landscapes, vegetation, small animals, wasn't a lot of big animals unfortunately. And yeah, so if I had to nail it down, I think it was day 8, the day coming up out of Scissors Crossing near Julian, and the desert was in bloom. It was just all these new flowers I'd never seen before. Everything was new, and yeah, it was just a really neat day, just with constant new things. I met some really neat people that day as well. So that's definitely a highlight. Obviously the Sierras, there's so many highlights on top of the big passes, you know, Forester Pass, and some of the passes after Kearsarge Pass were pretty impressive. And as I say, I just love, you put in all the work to get to the top of the pass and then you just stop and just look at the majestic landscape around. It's just, yeah, amazing, sort of out of world experience, and especially because there were no people around me. It was, yeah, I just felt like the only person left in the world. It was really, truly immersed into the wilderness. Just amazing. Northern California, I had expected to be pretty boring, but it was beautiful. And one of the highlights of Northern California was I think just before the Trinity Ranges and going through the Trinity Ranges was a beautiful area. Oregon around Crater Rim, that was pretty cool. And then Washington, most of it. Yeah, Washington was just absolutely amazing. But I think sort of the best half day in Washington was, a best full day was coming out of Snoqualmie, heading to Stevens Pass. That was amazing landscape. And yeah, in the Glacier National Park there were some pretty cool days as well. And finishing was definitely a highlight for me. So summarising the different sections, the desert, that goes from the start on the Mexican border through to Kennedy Meadows. I had expected the desert to be fairly flat, and not a lot of vegetation, or the vegetation be pretty the same. The scenery would be pretty much the same, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was pretty hilly. You definitely had some hills in there, and the landscape just changed so much. There was quite a lot of variety. I didn't expect them to be going through snow in the desert, but there was a bit of snow going through near Idlewild, going up Mount San Jacinto, Mount Bowden Powell, so those are pretty cool, and then back into the drier areas as well. So absolutely blown away by the desert. It's not something that you just have to get to the Sierras. It's an amazing journey just in itself. The Sierras, wow, that's what I wanted. I wanted mountains, I wanted high mountains, I wanted snow. I wasn't expecting quite so much snow, but yeah, that was amazing. Got a little bit of solitude. Yeah, absolutely loved it. Getting to the tops of the passes and then just looking around and just mountains and white 360 degrees. It was absolutely amazing. I'm a mountain girl, I love snow, so yeah, that really appealed to me. Northern California, a lot more snow than I was expecting. The snow just kept going and going and going. I was a little sick of the snow by the end, and it was actually after leaving the Sierras. So Sonora Pass is sort of where a lot of people say the Sierras end. From Sonora Pass for the next week or so was actually some of the harder traverses that I did. And I think, yeah, I was mentally I was very tired mentally between Sonora Pass and South Lake Tahoe, because it was a long period. I'd had the stress of getting through the Sierras. I had the mammoth to Sonora Pass, where I had the stress of the rivers. And then I didn't take a break at Sonora Pass. I just had half a day before continuing on. So I think by the time I got to South Lake Tahoe, I was pretty mentally drained. And that's the only time that mentally I got tired. Thankfully, I was looked after by some amazing trail hosts in South Lake Tahoe, had 3 days, and was fully energized mentally and physically after that, and didn't have any other bad patches mentally from there. Yeah, so Northern California, I'd expected that to be just another section that you get through to get to Oregon, but it was beautiful. Yeah, there was lots of times we were up nice and high and had amazing views. There were time along Hat Creek Rim that was pretty cool. You could see Mount Larsen and Mount Shasta, and for ages you could see both mountains, and then finally it was just Mount Shasta in the distance, and saw Mount Shasta. That was about 2 weeks Mount Shasta was in sight, heading towards it, around it, and then past it as well. So yeah, really enjoyed Northern California. Oregon was probably the biggest letdown. It had a lot of hype. Everyone was saying, get to Oregon. Oregon's beautiful. Oregon's amazing. Oregon's flat. You're going to go so fast. But yeah, I think because I'd been hyped up for what Oregon was going to look like, it was a little disappointing for me. A lot of fire damage, so a lot of the forests were dead. It was hilly. It wasn't flat. There were constant ups and downs. I think the difference is the ups and downs were sort of 1,000 feet as opposed to Washington, where you're getting 2,000 and up. And the gradients going up were pretty gentle as well. But there were definitely hills. Oregon is not a flat state. I did okay mileages. I was doing the 30 miles a day, which was good. Yep, happy with that. But yeah, the forests just weren't what I was picturing. There were small sections which were pretty cool, but on the whole, not what I was expecting. But yeah, it wasn't horrible. It was alright. And then had trail days on the border between Oregon and Washington. Great experience. Got to meet up with a whole lot of people, and yeah, see a whole lot of gear. And then Washington, I call it the wild state. It was amazing. Sort of go around the corner and I go, wow. Go around the next corner, wow. There is some sections which you're in the forest for quite a long time, but it was beautiful, healthy, lush green forest. So that was pretty cool. The only downer for Washington is wildlife. Didn't see a single deer. Northern California, well, Southern California, Sierras, Northern California, Oregon, heaps of deer. I think I passed 50 and the number of deer I saw. Bear, Northern California, 2 adults, 1 cub. Oregon, 2 adults. Washington, nothing. Had people talking about there's bears ahead, but it's a myth, never saw them. Yeah, so Washington was pretty cool. Other questions is sort of, you know, did I grow as a person doing the hike? I think for me, because this is my 3rd hike, it's not as much of a sort of a growth type exercise, and that's not what I'm after it for. I think my life's in fairly good order. I'm pretty happy with where I am. So that sort of wasn't the reason I was hiking. A lot of people say through hiking you're either running away from something or you're running to something. I'm not one of those ones. I just through hike because I love the simplicity of it and I love nature. So that's why I do it. So for me, no, not a lot of sort of personal growth. I did enjoy the social aspect of this hike. which is one of the reasons I chose the PCT, but I also had enough time to have the solitude that I wanted as well. So yeah, so in terms of personal growth, you know, traumas on the trail, sorry I didn't provide much entertainment in terms of tears and dramas and stuff like that. It's just not me. Other questions, I'm not sure. I'll be doing a question and answer session. I'll advertise it with about a week's warning. I'll time it so it suits USA. So for the Kiwis and Aussies, I'm sorry, it's going to mean either an early morning or a late night. I'm not sure which yet, but that'll be the chance for everyone to ask any questions they want about what it's been like for me on my journey on the trail, handy hints, things that they want to know. So now I'm going to get on with the statistics for the trail.